Next is the approval of the minutes of the May 10th, 2021 board meeting. Do I have a motion? Mr. Lovelace?
I move that we approve the minutes of the May 10, 2021 board meeting.
Do I have a second? Ms. Huddle seconds. Any questions? All those approve? And that's 7. Are you abstaining? That's right, you were not here. I'm sorry. So 6 with 1 abstention. And next is public participation. I wanted to say something before I read our statement that we always read before public participation. In the past, I guess really in an attempt to appear to not be rude, sometimes I've let somebody finish a sentence if they're in the middle of it. But I'm going to ask Dr. Harris to assure fairness and equity so no one feels like I let one person finish a sentence and not another, because I've certainly never meant to be in any way show any favoritism. I'll ask Dr. Harris when he does his little timer, once it's the 3 minutes, we can keep the timer going, and that helps me say thank you, and that way I'll be fair and equitable. The board does welcome and encourages public participation. We respectfully ask that you adhere to the procedures and the decorum provided in Board Policy BEDH, public participation at meetings. Your comments should be limited to 3 minutes. Questions asked during public participation will be handled in accordance with Board Policy BEDH. And we have one student, and it's Anna Grace Minch.
Hello, my name is Anna Grace Mensch, and I'm a student at Dutch Fork High School. I'm here to call for the resignation of any board trustee who's been publicly rebuked in local media for suggesting that it is inevitable for children to get COVID-19 in school, and says things like, "We can take control of the circumstances of which they get it, and that it will be okay because they are not at risk." I have no confidence in any such person's ability to make sound decisions for our school district, and call for any such trustee to resign his/her position on this school board immediately. Thank you.
Thank you. I do not want to say this wrong. Is it Ena Jane? EYMA. Help me on that. Emma. It's just a different spelling of Emma.
Good evening. My name is I'm a Jane.
Okay.
I am a Jane Doe because I can't tell you who I am for fear of retribution, like some teachers and other parents. I'd like to thank each of you for being courageous in your expression of opinion. You are indeed elected. Not everyone can win an election, obviously. However, those who do should be controlled in their communication, their rhetoric, and should be mediators. There is but one before me who I find to be a magnificent mediator, Dr. Melton. Now I'd like to share a couple of quotes. I want an American history taught. Unless I'm in that book, you're not in it either. History is not a procession of illustrious people. It's about what happens to people. Millions of anonymous people is what history is about. James Baldwin. This is paraphrasing. Today I speak to you not as a former physician. I speak to you as an apostle of the Lord Jesus Christ. The Savior taught that commandment after loving God, thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. Matthew 22:39. Wearing a face covering is a sign of Christ-like love for our brothers and sisters. This, from Dale Renland, an apostle of the Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. I'm a graduate of Irmo High School and of the University of South Carolina. I'm a mom to 3 beautiful children in the district. I'm a 12-year survivor of child abuse. The abuse that included striking, hitting, and psychological abuse, I was told for 12 years I would be nothing. Mask wearing is not child abuse. God forgive you for those who said it is. It is not. Digressing. To cover or not to cover, this is political. So let's talk about that. There's an assertion that this board expresses and represents Lexington Richland School
sorry.
District 5. But does it?
Time's up.
Do you?
Please, ma'am.
Before all of us sit a Caucasian board of trustees.
Thank you.
This is not representative of our school board.
Your time is up. Thank you.
I call for
Thank you.
fairness as you are tired, as you do not
Please.
represent. I yield my time.
Yeah, out of order. One of my statements that I just read, in the middle of a sentence, I don't like to be rude, but that went much over. And thank you, Dr. Harris, for keeping we just need a louder timer, I guess. Maybe they don't hear it. Josh Gray. Mr. Harris, right here.
I'll try and keep mine as well.
Thank you so much. We appreciate it.
No promises. So thank y'all for letting me come up and talk to you tonight. It's always wonderful to see you. I'm sure that many of you are excited to see me as well. I have a few things I want to try and present. The stack of papers in my hand are things that have been submitted to me by others in the community as well. So I'll try and get through this as quickly as possible. One, at last board meeting, and I think on social media and other places you might see these things, there was some expressions of votes of no confidence, specifically in Dr. Melton and her staff. So a group of us came together of concerned parents, advocates, alumni. We have put out a petition to express explicit confidence in Dr. Melton and her staff. We currently have about 730 signatures on that petition. It reads in part that we're very fortunate here, if I paraphrase it, in District 5, to not only have Dr. Melton, but also as the State Superintendent of the Year, but we also have Dr. Gary and Amy Carter, both of whom are essentially Principal of the Year and Teacher of the Year. And I don't think that's a coincidence. And with respect, whatever amount you may think that may be coming from me, I think you would have to also interpret that as something of a rebuke of the board to have all 3 of those awards coming to the district personnel at the same year. I don't think that's a coincidence at all. And so that award, that petition is up, and I will give the active petition later, but there are other signatures we currently have pulled from that. A few other things that I would like to say. There's been a lot of talk about science around this mask wearing and COVID. And I think it's important to reiterate that the scientific method is not arbitrary. It's not perfect, but not all data is the same. Just this past week, an article was put out by an international team in Science, one of the 2 most prestigious journals of interdisciplinary publication, showing that masks work for reasonable viral loadings. And that's not, most of the scientific literature is in consensus on that point. We'll be happy to share that with the board. Again, if you look in your own policy, the job of this board is not to manage the district. It's not to micromanage or even pico-manage. It is to policy and advise. And when you try to actually manage the district, it's been shown. It's counterproductive. Our own history in that, of other places that have looked into that issue. I think it was just brought up. I was going to mention that a lot of people before the board happened, before the so-called Triple H flip, said that having 5 of the 7 from Chapin wouldn't affect the board's performance. I think we can see that is not the case. And so, try and pull some of these other comments that I've collected around. A lot of this the board ran on the idea of transparency and accountability. And recently there's been a lot of conversation around whether or not the communication should be transparent and available. I would argue that anything that you send from your public email addresses or your public goal is inherently public, and the same with the things we send to you. And so in that regard, I have to say that, I also would have to, my board's right there, express a lack of confidence in any member that would put out
Thank you.
unfounded scientific or medical advice
Thank
or
you.
explicit legal advice that exposes us to liability. That is not sound decision-making.
Out of order.
Well, that's fine.
Thank you.
I appreciate your time. I got a big guy coming behind me, so I'll move off before I'm
Thank you, Dr. Harris. Next is Brandy Sturdivant. I apologize if I said it wrong.
That's okay. I'm used to it. It's Sturdivant.
Thank you.
Before I speak for myself, I'm going to speak on behalf of Cindy Reeves. I am the music teacher at Lee Park Elementary School, STEAM Magnet. It is not safe for me to be here in person when masks are no longer required, since I can't be vaccinated until August, so I've asked for my statement to be read for me. I have no confidence in any school board trustee who fails to protect its most vulnerable stakeholders and makes false claims that students are not at risk and do not spread COVID. I am saddened to watch masked students sit together at recess because they do not feel safe playing with unmasked students. I have no confidence in any school board trustee who seeks to recognize and protect the emotional needs of only those who cry for their freedom from masks while ignoring the emotional needs and ever-increasing anxiety of those who realize masks work when we all wear them. I have no confidence in any school board trustee who creates an environment that so disregards the interests of its educators to such a degree that a mass exodus of highly qualified teachers and staff members has already begun. I have no confidence in any school board trustee who does not support Dr. Melton, our state superintendent of the year, actively undermining her decisions and seeking to strip her of authority. I have no confidence in any school board trustee who actively seeks to divide this district and fails to admonish hate speech and racist remarks. I have no confidence in any such trustee's ability to make sound decisions for our school district and call for any such trustee to resign his or her position on the school board immediately. And again, that was from Cindy Reeves. And now, as for myself, Dr. Melton, congratulations on State Superintendent of the Year. That's really amazing. It would also be amazing to see what you would be able to do if you weren't throttled, and you and your administration throttled by the board. And I'm also really thankful for Dr. Davis and his team in in Richland 2 for allowing me to teach science in a district that believes in it.
Thank you. Ms. Kim Benson.
Good evening. I'm Kim Benson, and I have emailed with several of you, but tonight is the first night I've come to a board meeting in person because I feel like it's important enough despite the risk. And what really made me decide that was when a very good friend of mine called to tell me that everyone in her family tested positive for COVID last week. I'm going to read to you a letter by that mother. I'm going to start off with a letter that her son Jack wrote. I'm going to abbreviate his a little in the interest of time. My name is Jack Bull. I'm a junior at Irmo High School, and I would like to share my experience. My son and Jack have been friends since they were 2 years old. Since the mask mandate has been lifted at Lexington Richland 5, my days at school are filled with worry. Worry that when I pass people in the halls, I may catch COVID. Worry that COVID will get from my school to my family. Worry that when I go to school, I'm subjecting my family to getting the virus from a place that is unregulated. Well, my fears came true last week when our entire family tested positive for COVID. I'm now going to switch to his mom's letter. Her name is Jennifer Bull. And you're going to hear Jennifer refer to her daughter, Sophie, who is in the special ed program at Irmo High School. And I do hope you'll take a look at that picture. I am the mother of 2 students at Irmo High School, Jack Bull, a junior, and Sophie Bull, a student in the self-contained special ed class. Sophie has Angelman syndrome and is nonverbal. She also has epilepsy. Although she has been seizure-free for 16 years and off medication for 5 years, it is a constant worry that seizures could occur with any disruption to her body's normal, such as a fever. Throughout the COVID-19 pandemic, our family has been anxious about her health, especially about Sophie's. Although Sophie cannot and will not tolerate wearing a mask, the rest of our family is diligent, and knowing that her teachers and other students at school had to wear masks was a great comfort. So even though Sophie cannot mask, she has been protected by those around her for the last 13 months. But last week, within days of the school board lifting the mask mandate, our entire family tested positive for COVID. Based on the timeline, we have been able to determine that the exposure happened at school. Since being diagnosed last week, Sophie has had 3 seizures. We wait on pins and needles to see if she will have more seizure activity, which might land her in the ER. We are watching for aspiration, which could induce pneumonia. We are on alert for inflammation and blood clots.
Thank you.
I will submit this so you can read the rest of her letter.
Thank you. We appreciate that. Kim Murphy.
Hi, good evening. I know that your board packet may be different than the board packet that we see online, and I don't know if you have the opportunity to go online to see what those differences are. But I noticed in the board packet for tonight's meeting that there were the minutes of the May 10th meeting that you just approved were in there twice. And I'm thinking that's probably one of those is supposed to be the May 4th meeting that was also approved at the last meeting that should have been part of the minutes. So if you might want to look at that just to keep those straight. But also at the last meeting, a motion was made related to terminating Kelly Services and directing the administration to either issue an RFP for external substitute services or to develop an internal staffing plan to address those needs. I know that this is an administrative issue, but I happened to see on your purchasing site an RFP for removing a home on the property at Westcott that you had approved at the last meeting. But I did not see an RFP for the temporary services. So I don't know if that means that the superintendent is going to be working within versus a contractor handling it for us. I was wondering what the status was. But I also want to thank you for increasing substitute pay. That's fantastic. I think that may help us with our teaching needs that we have here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Murphy. And that concludes our public participation.